The first battle of Bayone 3 is one of the pivotal events in the Starships at War series, which is the first story cycle in my Captain Jason Hunter and the Bandit Jax universe. It depicts an amphibious assault by DSS Argent against forces operating in unknown strength on the surface of the colony planet. The captain and his crew are both convinced strange things are taking place in the system, not the least of which is the possible threat of an enemy spacehead being established on or under the Lethe Deep's defense base. The attack does not work out as planned for a number of reasons. The aftermath leaves the Perseus strike fleet in disarray and provides the anti-alarmist principals at Skywatch Command with an opportunity to neutralize a few of their enemies. At the top of their list is Commander Jace Hunter, who just happens to be the twin sister of their main target, the Captain of the Argent. Bayone 3 rapidly becomes a raw nerve for everyone involved. For those who would have preferred a total defeat for the Alliance forces, it became a dangerous, unfinished job, largely because their true objective was to rebuild their contrived justification for doing away with the remaining traditionalists at Skywatch. The rifle cutter weapons deployed by the Atlantis contacts were believed to be aimed at Argent. They hit Dunkirk instead, with predictable results. Then they hit Revenge, which turned out to be a fatal mistake. Naturally, the battle is misinterpreted by the Admiralty, but it does result in one positive outcome for the good guys. It focused senior Perseus officers on events that could not be easily explained away. At least 3 completely unexpected events followed, all of which fell right into place alongside what Hunter and his closest wingmen and women already believe form an ominous pattern. Starship Expeditionary Fleet gradually brings more evidence to light, including whispered rumors of genetic experiments involving human-Sarn hybrids that may have started at the Lethe Deep's base. Colonel Zachariah Atwell's ill-fated pursuit of Ithis technology humans can actually wield apparently got loose and found its way as far as Epsilon Gamma before Hunter and his other captains could even begin planning a containment strategy. It isn't until the stories in Destroy All Starships that the true magnitude of the Gitaran plot becomes recognizable. Then, a ship claiming to be DSS Defiant opens fire on enemy warships. In the resulting chaos, it becomes impossible for anyone to distinguish friend from foe. Some analysts believe the vessel is misidentifying itself on purpose. None of them can explain how Fleet Captain Marcus Reyes, a man still listed as missing in action, somehow regained command of an 8 million ton instrument of vengeance. Whatever it is has set course for Atlantis space, apparently hell-bent on not only violating almost a century of fleet doctrine, but holding whomever or whatever was responsible for the injustices visited on Commander DeMay, Commander Enright, and the crew of the Tezan accountable. Someone knew Strike Fleet Achilles would pursue Jason Hunter into the Omicron sector, possibly the same enemies that planned the Bayonne disaster. The presence of a full-strength Kraken task force in that region couldn't have been accidental. The sudden devastating explosion aboard Tezan wasn't an accident either. Admiral Halfnet's barely escaped. The captain of St. Lucia wasn't as fortunate. Meanwhile, the crew of the Silor may have discovered survivors aboard Tezan. If Commander Duke Holt is successful, and he finds what he's looking for at the edge of the supermassive singularity, guarding the border between the rest of map space and the mysterious Atlantis region, it could blow the lid off the entire investigation and finally shine a light on the plot that may have been underway since the first chapters of the Starship series. Is it possible? There's a single explanation that ties together the Gitaran campaign: the unexpected appearance of Imperial strike fighter technology, the enigmatic heretics, Ithis technology, the Atlantis treasure fleet, and the attempts on the lives of Captain Jason Hunter, Vice Admiral Charles Hughes, Shay Eileen Baines, and the crew of the battleship Argent? I'm writing a book called Last Charge of the Defiant. It is the first book in a new series called Advanced Starship Tactics. It is a story where I am making a concerted effort to allow readers to experience the true thunder of a catastrophic deep space battle using nothing but words on a page. Fleet Captain Marcus Reyes is not a reasonable man, nor is he a subtle combatant. He commands nothing less than Juggernaut herself. If he reaches Atlantis space, he will become an enormous problem for anyone opposing the discovery of what really happened during the battle between St. Lucia's battle group, DSS Argent, and the Kraken task force. Then there is the issue of the denominator. Someone or something emerged from the Raylio 2 obelisk carrying an object that has yet to be identified. More than one starship has sensor data indicating the object may have been at the center of a time inversion that opened a doorway into humanity's past. If that analysis is accurate, Captain Hunter and his team may soon find themselves not only fighting the Alliance's enemies in space, but in time as well. If you're new, this may all sound rather intimidating, but fear not. My science fiction is relatively easy to follow. I do my best to keep things breezy plot-wise, and I also take care to not overdo it with the jargon and tech. As an example, allow me to offer you a chapter from Book 4 in the Starships at War series. The aftermath of the Bayone incident may yet become the subject of an official inquiry and possibly legal action against the officers who fought to save their fellow ships from a deadly ambush. If you'd like to see all the books in the Starships Universe series, look for the link in the description and the pinned comment. We pick up the story aboard Allegheny Fleet Station, Core 3 system. Commander Jace Hunter faces none other than the CNC of Skywatch Northern Banner himself, Admiral Bartholomew James.
Lieutenant Colonel Oscar Dorset strode along the outer corridor of Fleet Station Allegheny with cool purpose. He carried with him a metal briefcase that signaled to other Skywatch personnel he was either a civilian liaison or assigned to some form of moderately important desk duty. Upon further inspection, the silver judge advocate's insignia on his collar would have answered all their questions. At Dorset's side was an equally impressive-looking Marine Master Sergeant. She was outfitted in a unique uniform with the distinctive crimson and gold colors of the non-com Class A, but used as reverse trim on a smooth black base fabric. Her insignia would have taken even experienced line commanders a moment to identify. She wore the rare red and white winged star of the Skywatch Criminal Investigation Command and carried a gold badge identifying her as a military police section chief. Unlike the attorney she accompanied, she wore a conspicuous sidearm on a white belt. The black utility cover completed the ensemble. The look on her face was all business. Between the two Marines, they carried considerable legal clout. One was there to serve the law, the other was there to enforce it. Their destination was Operations Conference 2, on Core 3 headquarters' highest deck. The two Marines were carrying orders from none other than General Julius Xavier Ross, the Skywatch Judge Advocate himself. Though the majority of cases taken up by attorneys assigned to the JAG Corps were handled admirably by officers with considerable legal talent and an uncommon dedication to justice, when admirals, task force commanders, and fleet captains were found to be at odds, and decorated line officers were being accused in public, it drew high-powered attention. Colonel Dorset had orders to gather the necessary information about the incidents, deliver the judge advocate's legal interpretation, and retrieve his client from custody. The two passed numerous personnel from every conceivable branch of service. More than a few crew members and officers assigned to the Orbital Defense Guard and Orbital Defense Auxiliary were present on the base, as most of ODG's ships had been ordered, inspected, and repaired or refitted as necessary, in case they were needed to patrol core systems. News of the conflict over Bayonne 3 and rumors of unidentified warships armed with never-before-seen weapons had triggered readiness protocols fleet-wide. This was one among many reasons dust-ups in the command ranks had to be dealt with swiftly and decisively. The last thing fleet needed were intramural wars interfering with the chain of command in crucial situations. Visible through the continuous bay windows on the outer wall of the corridor were two of the more notable vessels from Strike Fleet Perseus. Both were docked for load deck access. Nearer to the station was Defender Starship Minstrel. Her escort designation was proudly visible on her port quarter, while her identification was emblazoned on her sleek forward bow. Her recently upgraded energy batteries gleamed ominously at the outer tip of each wing. Behind her, hovering in space as if waiting silently for prey, was Minstrel's larger squadron-mate DSS Rhode Island. Unlike Minstrel's utilitarian gray outer hull, Rhode Island's color scheme was as black and featureless as the space she occupied. The way the two ships were situated, the sleek and dangerous-looking destroyer appeared as if she were daring an observer to approach the smaller vessel. Further in the distance hovered the eerie outline of the battleship Argent. By the way her hull was situated, she appeared to be looking back in the direction of the Bayonne system, towards a time and a place where the inexplicable and the unthinkable had happened. Virtually her entire space wing was gone, vanished through a doorway that had been ordered classified the moment it was reported to Skywatch Command. Strike Fleet Perseus had been urgently ordered to return to base. Scout vessels and then survey teams dispatched to the Blackburn Jump Gate had completed their first evaluation of the battlefield and the casualties. Search and rescue had managed to recover revenge and stragglers from the assault formation that engaged enemy forces over Bayonne 3. Survivors had been extracted from the starship Dunkirk as well. Both cruisers had been successfully recovered and delivered to the Gale River shipyards, where they were hidden from all but a few high-ranking investigators. Also parked at Gale River was the starship Saratoga, which had been ordered off-limits by Skywatch intelligence. The sense of loss hanging in space over Core 3 was almost overwhelming. The two Marines turned down a narrow passage towards the Deck 2 access lobby. They were 3 minutes early, but they still had the desk officer to contend with. Nobody was ever happy to see S-Jag. Oscar Dorset, I have orders to report to Operations Conference 27. The JAG officer flipped open his ID. The sergeant did the same. Her badge gleamed under the stark white lights. Very well, Colonel. Sign for authorization. The desk officer said casualty. You'll have to check your weapon, Sergeant. Negative, Ensign, the Marine MP replied calmly. Sidearms are not authorized on Deck 2. For everyone except posted watch and military police. Colonel Dorset replied as he handed the MP the pen. We're late as it is. I'm under orders. The sergeant is here to make sure I can carry them out. The desk officer didn't look convinced, but he certainly wasn't willing to pick a fight over interpretation of 800 pages of regulations with a JAG attorney as an opponent. Very well, your authorization expires in 2 hours. Here's hoping it doesn't take that long, Dorset replied as he put on his cover. The watch Marine at the lift snapped to attention. The sergeant activated the controls and held the automatic door for the colonel. Mahogany Row, Dorset said quietly as he emerged from the magneto lift. He returned another watch Marine's salute and led the sergeant down the finely appointed corridor towards the operations complex. The gold appointments, carpeting, and wood-paneled halls were reminiscent of white shoe law firms. They were now squarely in the realm of admirals and rooms full of brass. Everyone on this deck outranked thousands of other officers and crew. The Skywatch attorney mused with an appropriately healthy sense of irony. His only defense was his potential role as a prosecutor, and that his only chance at successfully completing his investigation was his authority as a defense attorney. This also happened to be one of his major weaknesses, as potential antagonists or defendants could turn out to be distinguished fleet and marine officers with all the juice necessary to fold up a mere silver leaf kernel like a camera tripod and store him at a footlocker. Nevertheless, the judge advocate's advanced delegation had made it this far. It remained to be seen if they would actually accomplish their mission, unique uniform insignia notwithstanding. Oscar Dorset here to see Vice Admiral Jackson. Aye, sir. The guard posted at this last of the gates was a sergeant major, indicating the JAG Corps had now advanced to a point only a few feet below the summit of the highest of Skywatch peaks. The guard opened the opulent wooden door and ushered the Marines into the room. Dorset immediately recognized he wore one of the lowest rank insignia among the officers present. Every other person seated at the table seemed a senior command officer, including his new client, Commander Jace Hunter. Across from the commander sat Admiral Bartholomew James, CNC Northern Banner. His 4 stars made him not only the ranking officer in the room, but likely one of, if not the senior command officer on the station. Northern Banner controlled a dizzying roster of warships. There were at least 5 major battle groups, including Task Force Ares, anchored by the heavy battleship Aquila. Admiral James was one of perhaps a half-dozen Skywatch officers capable of both starting and finishing a war on his own authority. Sitting at the head of the table was Vice Admiral Dexter Jackson. One Rear Admiral, a Commodore, and a female captain were also present, although both Dupree and Dorset would have to admit they had never met any of them. Dorset stood at attention and saluted. The sergeant did the same. Oscar Dorset, sir, this is SCIC Master Sergeant Alicia Dupree. I have orders from the Judge Advocate to represent the commander during these proceedings. By the book. Vice Admiral Dexter Jackson was the only person in the room who looked like he belonged. Behind him on the wall was an enormous hand-carved plaque depicting the eagle and compass emblem of Task Force Hecate. Very well, Colonel. Be seated. Thank you, sir. Dorset placed his briefcase on the table and took the seat provided for him next to his client. The military police sergeant stood at rest behind them. Everyone in the room was outfitted in their most impressive and intimidating dress uniforms. Jace Hunter looked like she was ready to take a bite out of her chair. Although her medals weren't as numerous as the flag officers, she made up for it with her no-nonsense bearing and a fire in her eyes that had to be seen to be believed. She proudly wore her task force insignia and Perseus emblem. Some might have interpreted the optional insignia as a young woman's attempt to measure up to her elders, but with the Hunters, few would have taken such an interpretation seriously. Even fewer would dream of challenging the commander with her brother missing and presumed dead. Based on what had reportedly transpired over, on, and under the surface of Bayone 3, this was going to be hard enough without picking a fight. Before her on the table was her sword. Like all commanding officers, Jace Hunter had a silver-appointed sword that was more or less a physical representation of her office and authority. By both tradition and code, in official inquiries, commanding officers were required to relinquish their blades until their superiors issued their decisions. Once cleared, the weapons were handed back. If not, they were withheld, a gesture meant to indicate their authority had been diminished. Let the record indicate Commander Jace Hunter is now being represented by Special Warfare Division Judge Advocate Oscar Dorset. Inquiry date as previously indicated with all appropriate prior records attached. See to whatever else is necessary, yeoman. Admiral Jackson spoke with a deep basso that was strangely comforting, as if powerful forces had finally arrived to enforce some level of stability and calm after what everyone had agreed by now was a rather harrowing series of incidents. The young woman nodded and worked quietly on a mechanical keyboard. Let the record also indicate this meeting is being recorded and is classified per Skywatch regulations, Section 4002A and 5106C inclusive. Do you wish to make any statements before we proceed, Commander? Before Jace had an opportunity, Dorset intervened. The commander will be making no statements at this time, sir. So we leave the house in flames and then lawyer up when the fire department arrives? Admiral James said in a hostile tone, or should I say, several houses. There is no evidence the commander is responsible for what may or may not have happened in the Bayone system, sir. We are not here to engage in recriminations. We are here to determine what happened as part of a preliminary inquiry. Fury's crew hasn't even been fully debriefed yet. Well, seeing as the commander has lawyered up and is not prepared to make a statement, how do you propose we inquire, Counselor? None of us were there. The only ships we have access to that were in Bayonne when this incident took place are Argent and the members of her space wing that survived. Now we're hearing stories about her malfunctioning battle computer and the fact she was apparently under the command of a girl young enough to be my granddaughter when her captain was blown out of space by a previously undetected and unidentified pirate. I'll ask that you kindly refer to my officers by their proper name and rank, Admiral, Jay snapped. You speak when spoken to, Commander, is that clear? With all due respect, you're not here to give orders, Admiral, Dorset countered. This isn't a midshipman review. Watch yourself, Colonel, James replied with a squint. I will be very happy to bring the full weight of my authority down on this little circus, with or without provocation. The more you and your client mouth off, the easier it gets. Admiral, I am here to represent Commander Hunter by authority of the Judge Advocate himself. If you object to my presence or my representation to this officer, feel free to take the matter up with General Ross. In the meantime, I don't work for you, and I don't take orders from you. I'm also constrained to remind you interfering with my investigation and interfering in my relationship with my client are both prohibited under Skywatch regulations. How dare you quote regulations to me, you little... All right, Admiral Jackson interrupted. It's clear we have some intense opinions on these matters. Let's stick to the facts. Hunter glared across the table. Sergeant Dupree was pretty sure Jace could take the Admiral if it came to that. Commander Hunter's fiery personality was well known, especially given all the attention her brother had attracted during his rapid rise to command. Admiral James nodded to the captain on his side of his table. The facts are these, she began. The starship Dunkirk is a complete loss. What's left of her had to be tractored back to base. 71 dead, including Acting Commander Toby DeMay. 110 injured, 26 missing. The starship Revenge is a complete loss. 215 dead, 16 injured, 11 missing. Commander Enright's injuries have ended his career. The starships Constellation and Exeter, both missing, presumed lost with their captains and crews. Assault Squadron 808, all ships missing, presumed lost. More than 1,600 Skywatch Marines, pilots, and crew missing over Bayonne 3, including Lieutenant Colonel Lucas Moody, the crew of Paladin 6-4, Strike Sergeant Roy Alexander, and his canine. Hunter leaned forward to respond, but Dorset put his hand on her arm to gently remind her to remain silent. Fleet Captain Jason Hunter lost, piloting an unarmed and unescorted fighter during an ongoing firefight between two starships burning in space. At the time, an acting commander, with less than a week's experience as executive officer, was at least nominally in command of a Skywatch ship of the line. DSS Argent survived the engagement, but lost more than 85% of her space wing, which was either destroyed or lost when, according to those members of Argent's crew we've interviewed so far, an entire planet vanished in space. The captain let the tablet clatter to the table, which caused the yeoman to flinch. That's all we were able to gather from statements made by Argent's bridge crew, and by the presence or absence of the listed personnel. Do you have anything to add, Commander?
The rest of the story is only one click away. Find the link and join us at the home for critically acclaimed science fiction, fantasy, gamelit, comics, and more. Exciting new chapters are waiting for you right now. Join the adventure today.